Hey, ninth grader. All right, you were probably watching this because you want to retake your inequalities test. I'm going to go over everything from the test. So if you still have the paper that you used when you took the test in the first place, that's going to be super helpful because you can see what you did wrong and you can correct your mistakes so that you can do much, much, much better on the retake. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started on this review. Okay, so I'm going to start with question number 1. And let me get my pen started. Okay, on question number 1, let's begin by solving this equation. We're going to graph it and we're going to write it in interval notation. So I want to get all the x's to the same side. I'll start by subtracting 2x from both sides. So when I do that, I still have 7, but instead of minus 6x, I have minus 8x because negative 6 minus 2 is negative 8. And on the other side, 87. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is get rid of that 7. So I'll subtract 7 from both sides. And when I do that, on the left, I have negative 8x is greater than 80. Got a little bit cramped. Okay, last step to undo negative 8 times x, I divide by negative 8 on both sides. And my final answer will be x. And remember, when we divide by a negative, that symbol reverses. So it's going to be greater than negative 10. All right, so my interval notation answer, x is greater than negative 10. Okay, so what is that going to look like as a graph? Well, let me put my graph on here. It's going to be a beautiful number line. Negative 10, the number above negative 10 would be negative 9, and the number below negative 10 is negative 11. Remember, negatives line up in the opposite direction of positives because 0 and then you go to the left to get bigger. Okay, so it's going to be open circle at negative 10 because it does not have an equal to, and it says x is greater than negative 10, so the shading is going to go up greater than negative 10. So my interval notation is starting at negative 10 and it's going upward toward infinity. Remember, you can never touch infinity, which is why we're going to have an open parenthesis on the negative infinity or the positive infinity. And then it starts at negative 10, but it doesn't touch. So we have an open parenthesis there as well. All right, let's fill in these blanks in. Was it an open or closed circle? Well, that circle is open at negative 10. And it looks like we had to shade above the circle. My interval answer, soft parenthesis, negative 10, comma, infinity. Okay, moving on to question number 2. On question number 2, solve the inequality, show all steps, and graph the solutions. So let's start by distributing this negative 2 to everything inside the parentheses. Okay, so negative 2 times 4x would be negative 8x. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6, and that's greater than or equal to negative 10. Then I can subtract 6 from both sides, and I get negative 8x is greater than or equal to negative 16. Last step, to undo negative 8 times x, I divide by negative 8 on both sides of the equal sign. Remember, when you divide by a negative, your symbol in the middle reverses. So this is going to be x is now less than or equal to 2. All right, so when I write my inequality answer, I will say x is less than or equal to 2. Remember, you write the less than symbol, then the equal, less than equals. Okay, let's get the number line drawn on here and we can talk about this graph. So we put positive 2 on the number line. Above that would be 3 and below that would be 1. Then since there's an equal to, I've got to fill in a circle at 2. And it says x is less than that, so I shade everything below that 2. So that means my interval starts at negative infinity because it points to the left. Never can actually reach that, so I do an open parenthesis, comma 2 with a hard bracket because it actually does touch 2, which is why that circle is filled in. Okay, so this was a closed circle at 2, and we shaded below. Our interval answer, soft parenthesis, negative infinity, comma 2, hard parenthesis after the 2. Okay, let's clear that out and we can go to problem number 3. An airplane must fly between 30,000 feet and 40,000 feet for optimum fuel efficiency and speed. Determine the compound, that should say inequality, for the desired height of an airplane. So the compound inequality would be Let's get this on here. Okay, I know that I want to go between 30,000 and 40,000. So if I were looking at a graph, it would be something like this. 30,000 and then 40,000. Between is going to be all the space that says 4,000. There we go. Between is going to be all the space in the middle of those. And then we talked about this in class. Does between include these? Well, if you're between these two numbers, can you be one of them? Is 30,000 between these two things? It's not. Those are open circles. So we need it to be 30,000 is less than X is less than 40,000. This is an and statement, which would also look like this: 30,000, comma, 40,000. All right. So let's figure out what those are. 30,000 is less than this one. That matches what we wrote down. 30,000 is less than X, which is less than 40,000. The interval is soft parentheses 30,000 to 40,000. Okay, let's go to the next one. It is unsafe to drive on the highway at speeds slower than 45 miles per hour or speeds faster than 75 miles per hour. Determine the compound inequality to represent these unsafe speeds. So I'm going to start by graphing where it's unsafe. Okay, so I know I've got 45 and 75 miles per hour. Did they say it's unsafe to drive between those or unsafe to drive outside of those? Well, if you're going slower than 45, that's unsafe. So this is all unsafe, and it says slower than, so it's not going to include the 45. Because 45 is apparently safe, it's not slower than 45. And then faster than 75, that means 75 is not included, and everything above it would be. So this is the shading lower than 45, or the shading greater than 75, which would be negative infinity to 45, or 75 to infinity. All right, let's get that found on here. X is less than 45, or X is greater than 75, and negative infinity to 45 with a soft parenthesis, or 75 to infinity, soft parentheses. All right, let's go to problem number 5. Solve the compound inequality. I love these kind of compound inequalities. I feel like they're so beautiful. Okay, on this one, we've got negative 18 is less than 3x minus 6 is less than or equal to negative 3. Okay, I'm going to separate this because it helps me stay organized. I want the centerpiece to just have x. So I'll start by adding 6. Please make sure you're showing your work in all 3 sections here. Then I have negative 18 plus 6 would give me negative 12, still less than 3x, which is less than or equal to 3. Last step, divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. Notice I divided all 3 of them by a positive 3, so those symbols stay the same. I've got negative 4 is less than x is less than or equal to 1. All right, so when I type that in, I get negative 4 is less than x is less than or equal to 1. All right, let's graph that. Remember, you're gonna have to graph, you're gonna have to upload your graph on the next answer. So when I graph this, it starts at negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it's going to be an open circle at negative 4, a closed circle at 1, and then x is between them, so the shading is between them. My interval notation then will be from negative 4 with a soft parenthesis up to 1 with a hard parenthesis. So I will say soft parenthesis, negative 4, comma 1, hard parenthesis. Perfect. Okay, let's move on to question number 5. Or 6. 6 is where you upload a picture of your graph. I just had my graph up there. If you need to see it again, you can go back and rewind, but hopefully you're following along, so you already have it. Okay, let's go to problem number 7. On number 7, we've got 2x minus 1 is greater than 5, or x minus 7 is less than negative 15. I'll start over here. I'm going to add 1 to both sides. And when I do that, I have 2x is greater than 6. Then I want to divide by 2, divide by 2. When I said divide by 2, did you notice how I wrote 6's? That was really weird. Let's actually divide by 2. And we get x is greater than 3. I swear sometimes I'm talking and I'm not thinking and blah, blah, blah. That's why I make mistakes. Yay, in math. Okay, add 7 to both sides here. Negative 15 plus 7, what is that? Remember, if you have like a brain freeze like I do right now, you could always type it in. Negative 15 plus 7 is negative 8. Great. So we have x, oh boy, x is less than negative 8. So x is greater than 3, or x is less than negative 8. Let's type that in. X greater than 3, space or space, x less than negative 8. Okay, my graph for that is going to look like this. We will draw our number line. And we know we're going to have a negative 8 and a 3. So negative 8, negative 7, negative 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we are going greater than 3. So open circle at 3, shaded the greater side. And then x is less than negative 8, an open circle at negative 8, shading below. That would be negative infinity to negative 8, or 3 to infinity. All right, and when I type that in, negative infinity to negative 8, or 3 to infinity. Perfect. Okay, remember this graph right here is going to be uploaded on question number 8. At least it was when you took your test, and it will be when you do your retake stuff. Okay, number 9, yay, solving absolute value inequalities. Remember, when you have an inequality like this, your first job is to see, is there anything I need to get rid of? Now on this problem, it's just the 2x minus 4 in absolute values. But on question number 10, it's x plus 8 and then the subtracting 5. So we'd have to get rid of that subtracting 5 before we can split this inequality. However, on number 9, there is nothing outside those absolute values. So I can actually take this stuff and I can write my 2 inequalities. So I have 2x minus 4 is greater than 20. That's the one that was given to me. And then remember, when it's greater than, you're shading the bigger side. You're going to shade out from the numbers that are on the number line. That's an OR graph. And then you also have 2x minus 4. And instead of greater than 20, this one's going to be less than negative 20. All right, so we add 4, and I have 2x is greater than 24. And then I can divide by 2, and I get x is greater than 12. Remember, we still have an OR here. On the other side, I begin by adding 4 to both sides, and I get 2x is less than negative 16. Last step, divide by 2, and my final answer, x is less than negative 8. So I have x is greater than 12, or x is less than negative 8. Now, I've actually got everything. I did this all. So this is going to be the final answer, but the questions in between are saying, what's the first inequality that you need to solve? Well, that was right here. So that first inequality was 2x minus 4 is greater than 20. All right, then it says, is this an and or an or statement? This has an or, so I can type in or. And then lastly, it says, what's the second inequality? That's right here. That is 2x minus 4 is less than negative 20. Okay, And then our final solution, x is greater than 12 or x is less than -8. Perfect. Let's go ahead and do problem number 10. Remember, on problem number 10, before I can start solving it, I need to get rid of this subtracting 5. So I am going to go ahead and add 5 on both sides of this so that I can actually split my inequality. So I have absolute value of x plus 8. And then remember, when I added the 5, those are gone, and it's less than or equal to 6. So now, when I split my inequality, I can take this stuff and I'll rewrite it the way it's already written, just without absolute values for the first inequality. So that would be x plus 8 is less than or equal to 6. Then remember, this less than symbol means they're going to be closer together than the numbers. That's going to be an and statement because it's less than, it goes inward. Okay, my second inequality starts with the x plus 8, but instead of being less than or equal to 6, it's going to be greater than or equal to -6. All right, then we can subtract 8, and I've got x is less than or equal to -2. And on the other side, I can subtract 8, and I get x is greater than or equal, what is that? -6 minus 8 is -14. All right, so my final answer there is, hold on, I'm seeing a mistake on my work. I hope you all see the mistake too. So Mrs. Johnson made a major mistake when I added this 5. Remember how we were supposed to add 5 to both sides? 6 plus 5 does not equal 6. So right there, when I got rid of the 5 on the left, I didn't actually add the 5 on the right. So I'm going to make a couple fixes here. And this is actually great examples of when you make mistakes on your stuff. It's okay. You can just go through and fix the things that were wrong. So I need to get rid of where I had those 6s. So this was a +6. That was a -6. Let's change those. Because 6 plus 5 is 11, this is going to be a +11, and this is a -11. Okay, then we're still subtracting 8. So 11 minus 8. 9, 10, 11. That would be +3. So I need to erase this -2, and I need to erase this -14. And let's get this on here. This is +3. And on the other side, -11 minus 8 gives me -19. Whew, narrowly avoided me getting every single problem wrong here. Okay. Remember, mistakes happen on tests all the time, so please try to just double check your work as you go. We have our first inequality was going to be x plus 8 is less than or equal to 11, separated by an and our second inequality, x plus 8, would be greater than or equal to -11. The final solution, x is less than or equal to 3, space, and space, x is greater than or equal to -19. If you're wondering if you can write this as the other sort of and statement, the answer is, of course you can. If you're greater than -19 and less than 3, well, it would look like this on the number line, -19, and then you'd have 3, and it would be shading between these. So it looks something like this. So that's really -19 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 3. Both of those answers are totally acceptable. You could put either one. Okay, and then you would need to upload your solution to the next problem, or your work, I should say. But let's submit this. And let me pause this for 1 second while it grades. Okay, so if we look at this, 38 out of 44, then you might be like, why did I get so many low? Because remember, question 6 hasn't been graded yet. That would be worth 2 points. And question 8 hasn't been graded yet. That's worth 2 points. And then scroll down to the very bottom. These two have obviously not been graded yet either. So we got them correct. Now you're going to move on and do the extra practice. So let me know if you need any help on that, because you have to get 80% in order for the retake to open.